Welcome back to my channel. I'm Deb and this is DG Reads, and today I'm here to talk about mothers. With Mother's Day quickly approaching, I've been thinking of ideas. In this household, there's just the furry kid and me as dog mom, but I will be celebrating Mother's Day with my mother, and I'm not quite sure what we're doing yet, but it did put me in the realm of thinking about mothers in general, and I do have a lot of books on my shelves that hit on the subject of mothers, so that's going to be my focus in this particular vlog. Starting out, I've got You Know What You Did by KT Nguyen. This one is an April release, and it's dealing with a Vietnamese woman and her mother, who is a Vietnamese refugee, and the complicated mother-daughter dynamic there and with her own daughter. I'll let you know more once I am reading on that one. And then I have picked up Crossroads, which is by Laurel Hightower. This is a horror novella following a woman whose son has been killed and the length she goes to deal with that. And I don't know a lot about it, but with this short of a read, I don't want to go in knowing a lot, so I'm looking forward to this one. I've heard some really great reviews, I've heard some not great reviews, so I'm curious where I wind up landing. I've got Family, and this is the latest release from Laurie Frankel. I've really enjoyed her books in the past and have heard good things about this one. I know this is about an adoptive mother, and she's on either a TV show or a movie also about an adoptive mother, and something social media goes wrong or there's some blow up and drama ensues, and I'm curious to find out about this one. And lastly, I have Monstrilio by Gerardo, Sámano, Córdova, and that one is a literary horror about a boy who transforms into a monster. And again, another one I don't know a lot about going into it, but I will update you when I do know more. So I'm looking forward to getting my Mother's Day plan sorted out, getting some great reads in this week, and I'll take you along for the journey and let you know how it's going. Sorry for the rough lighting, but I wanted to give a quick update on You Know What You Did by KT Nguyen. It's the first book in my mother vlog that I've started, and I'm probably about 40% in at this point. We're following on Lee, otherwise known as Annie, and she's an artist and a mother and a wife, and she's had a very contentious relationship with her mother, and now her mother has died unexpectedly, and that's really sent her into a spiral. Annie deals with OCD, and it's the type that really causes her to obsess over the body and fluids and coming in contact with things that are dirty. She's had it really under control for the last many years, but now it's really out of control again. She's obsessing over things like the dog and the people she meets, and it's really rough, and it is hard to read about at times. The author does mention that they themselves have OCD, so it is an own voice's perspective, I believe. I can't speak to it personally, but it really is visceral in the moment. Some of the scenes are really hard to read about. I was listening during lunch, and that wasn't the best idea. Trigger warnings definitely also for animal death. That was a whole scene as well, and though this is more mystery thriller, there's definitely horror and body horror elements in it as well. The relationship that Annie had with her mother, and then now the relationship she's having as a mother with her daughter, her teenage daughter, is really complicated, and this is something that fits within the mother theme that is going on with this vlog. So that's my thoughts at the moment. I'm finding it a little bit slow in parts, but I really do feel for Annie. I think the mental health rep is wonderful, which I really appreciate, and I am looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. From the synopsis, I know that we're meant to get to a point where her patron has disappeared, and that has just barely happened now at the 40% mark. We haven't gotten to the dead body that is mentioned in the synopsis yet, so interested to see where it's going, and I will check in with you later. I finished up You Know What You Did Today, and overall I really liked it. I think it felt a little bit longer than it needed to be. It was a little on the slow side in places, but I think overall I really liked the mental health rep it provided, and I think it did really draw the reader into those feelings. There were moments where I definitely was confused. There were some time jumps in the way the story was presented. Things would happen and then it would flash back a little bit in time, but I think that confusion was intentional, and the main character certainly was confused as well. The ending I have a little bit of mixed feelings about, and there's nothing I can really say about why, but it did surprise me a little bit. I didn't see it coming. I'm not 100% sure I like the twist where it went, but I liked the fact that it did kind of come out of nowhere for me. But at the same time, there were elements that I could look back on and it made sense. So much going on, it just kind of distracted me from it. So overall, I really enjoyed this one. I'm giving it 4 stars, and it was definitely well fitting for a mother theme, because the idea of motherhood and being a child of a mother and the way those relationships work, generational trauma, especially with the mother being a Vietnam refugee, and some of the mental health stuff she had going on, and the way that fed into her daughter and their relationship and the trouble that they had between them, which doesn't justify what her mother did to her in cases, but you can kind of also see the reasoning on why she really wasn't set up to be fit to be a good mother to her daughter all the time, even though they had good moments as well. And thank you again to Dutton and to PRH Audio for letting me review that one, and I'll be back with my next pick. Popping in super fast to say that I'm 20% into a new book that is not part of this vlog, but it took me this long to realize that it literally has mother in the title. I'm currently reading Sins of the Mother by Rob J. Hayes. I'm not including it in this vlog because it is book 4 in a series, but I thought it was funny that I randomly wound up picking one up for no particular reason, but it wound up fitting the theme. I would recommend the series. It starts with Along the Razor's Edge. It's a fantastic self-pub fantasy series. There's 5 books. I'm out in book 4, so there's not a lot I could say about it, this particular book at this point, without spoiling the first set of books in the series. But I've been really enjoying it and would recommend, so I thought I might as well pop in here and say a little something about it. So that's it. I'm here to check in because I've started Monstrilio. This is following a grieving mother after the death of her 11-year-old son. He was born with only 1 lung and wasn't expected to live, so the fact that he made it to age 11 is impressive, but it's still heartbreaking. His mother cuts out a piece of his lung and takes it back to her family home. And when she hears a folklore tale of someone nurturing a body part back into life, she decides to feed the lung that she has, and it begins to gain the ability to move around, to eat, and eat a lot, and to gain sentience. I don't want to say too much beyond that, but it's definitely kind of in the wheelhouse of a weird horror that I enjoy. Grief horror, for some reason, does tend to work for me, so I am enjoying it so far. It's a very quick read. I made it through the first 45% just this evening while I was making dinner and eating dinner, so I will be finishing this up and probably be looking to check back in with you in the morning after I finish the book. Kylie and I are here to do my final wrap up on Monstrilio. She decided she needed to stare at you through the camera while I'm talking, so we have some company here. But that's only fair because she did, in fact, listen to quite a bit of Monstrilio with me, and I'm sure she has her own thoughts. I really enjoyed this one. It's definitely literary horror and grief horror, and those are two things that I do enjoy. It is very slow burn. Don't go into this expecting a lot of scares and that type of thing. It relies more on body horror and gore, and it's really a great book, I think, for discussion. And I will be going back to watch Books and Lala's Literally Dead book club discussion on this one because I just feel the need to hear other people's thoughts about it. I really like this author's writing. I think he had a really incredible ability to make you feel the grief that the characters are going through. The book opens with the mother's POV, and that really just was heartbreaking. And as the book goes, you actually change POVs. And it was an interesting way of doing it because you don't ever return back to the mother. You don't return to any of the POVs that have passed. And there were a few times where I really wished I could have gone back to a previous POV and heard what was happening from their perspective. But I think the author did a really good job of delivering the story in this format. I think the character of Monstrilio and the way different people interacted with this character and with this being and the evolution of that character were all just really interesting. There is a lot of sex on page, which is not usually something I want in my horror, but in this case there was enough going on that it didn't distract from my enjoyment of the story overall. I felt like there was purpose behind what is on page. There are just so many good discussions going on in here about relationships, about family, about parenthood in general, not just mothers, and romance and queer romance, and there just is so much good going on in here. This is a debut for this author, and I absolutely will be picking up more when they come out with it, so I look forward to that as well. This was definitely a success, and I gave this one a 4.5. Okay, I've started my next book for the Mother's Day themed vlog, and that is Family Family by Laurie Frankel. And I am about 40% into this, so a little over, probably about 150 pages. I've been listening to this on audio, so I don't have the exact page in here, but I'm really enjoying it so far. It's definitely a very different vibe to some of these other books that I picked for this vlog, but I'm glad to have a little bit of a change of pace going on, and I'm liking this one a lot. It hits on a lot of hard subjects. We've got a lot of themes of motherhood and whether somebody's ready to be a mother, whether someone's not ready to be a mother. And I think that this is an author who really writes relationships well and complicated relationships well. And I'm really just vibing with it. So I'm going to keep going on this. I'll get you my final thoughts in the end, but I wanted to provide a quick update as I was going. I have now finished Family Family, and I really enjoyed this. It was very different from what I had thought it was going to be going into it. And the stuff that I think I mentioned that I knew about the synopsis really doesn't almost come in until the end. But this 100% was a good pick for this particular theme. And I really think this author does a really good job of talking about issues, talking about adoption, and it's done from both sides. The main character in the story has experience with not being ready to be a mother and also being ready to have children and not having a partner in her life to do that with, and being a single adoptive mother. She's a celebrity, so that adds some complication to matters, but she really puts her children at the forefront of her decision making, and I really liked the discussions. There is a lot about what it takes to be a mother, what it takes to be ready to be a mother, and also discussion about abortion. The main character gets accused of being pro-adoption because she's anti-abortion, and that's not the case. She very much believes in a woman's right to choose, but for her, the choice wound up being adoption. I thought there were so many good discussions in here. I loved the fact that it was talked about blood family versus found family, and who counts as family and who doesn't count as family. I did a few times get a little bit pulled out of the story or a little bit lost in the timeline as we moved back and forth in time. And I think some of that was maybe because I was listening to the audiobook, and some of things may have been more clear when there were time changes in the physical copy. But overall, this was a really good time, and I gave it 4 stars. I am 22 pages into Crossroads by Laurel Hightower, and I wanted to give my initial thoughts a little bit early for this one because it is only 110 pages. This is following Chris, who is a grieving mother. Her son was killed in a single car accident nearly 2 years ago, and it's coming up on the anniversary of that, and she's still really struggling, quite naturally. She spends a lot of time with the cross that was put up at the place he died, at the Crossroads, and she is able there to kind of hear his voice in her mind. She can imagine conversations with him and imagines him being just behind her shoulder. And she doesn't look because she doesn't want to break the illusion. One visit to the cross, she winds up cutting herself and bleeding on the ground purely by accident. And later on that evening, she sees what she assumes to be his ghost standing outside of her house. And all of a sudden, it's not really working to imagine the conversations with him. She's not hearing his voice anymore. And she begins to look into kind of the lore around Crossroads and demons and making deals with demons at Crossroads to see what she might need to do to be able to get him back in some way, shape, or form. I didn't really intend for so many of the books in this vlog to have to do with grieving mothers, but this does definitely have parallels to Monstrilio in that sense. And I think this one's doing a good job of delivering the sense of grief in the beginning. Maybe not quite as strongly as Monstrilio did for me personally, but I definitely feel for Chris and her struggles, and I'm looking forward to binge reading this one today. And I've now finished up Crossroads, and I really liked this one. I think it accomplished a lot in talking about what mothers will do and what they will sacrifice for their children. It was definitely disturbing, a lot of body horror going on in here, definitely grief as well. And I really liked how the book also included some positives in Chris's life as the mother. And even though, as she's approaching this 2-year anniversary of her son's death, she is finding some good things in her life and some things that are giving her hope. But still, that grief over his loss and the way that this entity, this ghost, or whatever it may be, is pulling her back into that grief and into wanting to solve the fact that he's dead, creates a really interesting juxtaposition in terms of what is going on in her life. And I think the reader is meant to question what this actually is. Is it really her son? Is it not? There are other elements at play, other characters who can kind of weigh in on things a little bit, but ultimately it's her perspective that we're getting. So we're seeing her thought process, her beliefs, her doubts, and it just was a really interesting time. Not quite sure how I feel about the ending. I found it disturbing, as with much of the book, but it would definitely be a book that's really open for good discussion. I think that a lot of the friends I've seen rate this 5 stars have been mothers themselves, and I can absolutely see why having that connection and being able to relate in that way would make you even more invested in the story and in this main character. I don't have that connection, but I do really feel for Chris, and I could understand, even as I wasn't always in agreement with what she was doing, why she was doing it. So with this, that wraps up this vlog. As this vlog is going live, I'm going to be heading out with this little girl to spend Mother's Day with my mother. And aside from that, really my only plans are to have lots of cozy snuggle time with my little girl. So I hope you've enjoyed hearing my thoughts on these books. If you have any particular books that you would recommend about mothers, I would appreciate all the recommendations. I think this wound up being a really good assortment of books to have a lot of different conversations between contemporary and horror and thriller. I think this wound up being a really good mix. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you so much. If you could please hit that like button below, subscribe if you're interested in more content from Kylie and myself, and leave me a comment below. Let me know if you're celebrating Mother's Day this weekend, what you're up to, or leave me a present emoji because I need to remember to take my Mother's Day gift to my mother. That's it for now, and we'll catch you in the next one.